This segment is going to talk about 5 things to look for when handicapping a race. Whenever I pick up a racing form or past performances, I always look for 5 essential things that help me determine who's going to win the race. The first is class moves. Second is pace. The third thing I look for is significant equipment, jockey, or trainer changes. Next, I look for beaten favorites. And last but not least, I look for horses that had trouble in their last start. Let's start with class moves. Class tells you what kind of races the horses have been running in. This race at Hollywood Park is a $12,500 claiming race. So the first thing I'll do is I'll glance through the PPs of the horses and I'll see what they've been running in. This first horse, La Chola, well, she ran in her last race for $12,500, the same class as today's race, so I'll just put a little dash that tells me that she fits right with these types of horses. When I move down to the 2-horse, Schindler, well, her last race was an allowance race, which is a much, much tougher race than a claiming race. In fact, she could not be purchased in that race, but today she could be purchased for $12,500. This is a significant drop in class. So I'll put a couple arrows there that'll jump out at me and let me know that she's dropping down in class. The last horse, Julep Cup, well, her last race was $16,000, a $16,000 claiming race. Not as tough as Schindler's allowance race, but still a drop in class. I'll give her 1 arrow down. Once I've done this for the entire field, it'll help me determine how strong of a race this is for $12,500. If a lot of horses are moving up in class, then a horse that maybe ran for $8,000 or $10,000 last time has a chance to win. But if a lot of horses are dropping in class, it means it's a very tough $12,500 claiming race. The next thing we're going to look at is equipment, jockey, and trainer changes. Let's talk about trainers first. The 5-horse, Hidden Beauty, is trained by Frank Monteleone. Frank Monteleone claimed Hidden Beauty in her last start for $12,500. Why is this significant? Well, if you go back 5 starts earlier, you'll see that Frank Monteleone used to train this filly and had her claimed from him or purchased for $12,500. What does this mean? Well, when you glance down at the bottom of the PPs of this horse, the racing form will tell you that in this situation, Frank Monteleone, when he claims a horse and runs that horse in its first start, he'll win 18% of the time, a very high percentage. This makes this horse a live horse today. Another thing to look for is equipment changes. If you look at the number 8 horse, In My Life, well, she is adding blinkers today. What do blinkers do? Blinkers help keep a horse focused and sometimes will add speed into the horse's performance. Remember, we talked about earlier how this race doesn't have a lot of speed. Well, by putting blinkers on In My Life, I think that she's going to be closer to the pace today, and that's going to give her a better chance of winning. We also talked about looking for horses that were beaten favorites. Well, In My Life fits that category. If you look over at the right where the horse's odds are, the little asterisk next to the 1.30 tells you that that horse was the favorite. So in her last start, In My Life was a beaten favorite. Today she's adding blinkers, which probably gives her a better chance. Another thing we look for is trouble trips. Horses that had problems in their last start. Well, guess what? In My Life also fits that category. When you go to the far right, you'll see that In My Life bobbled a bit at the start, and that maybe slowed her down a little bit. You combine that with the fact that she's adding blinkers today and that there's not a lot of speed in the race, and I say that In My Life has a good chance of winning today.